Welcome to KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. Today I'll be making a very easy one skillet dinner that you can prepare and serve in less than 30 minutes. I made a modified version of this recipe in our self-catering apartment while we were in Zadar, Croatia. If you're interested to hear about our experience with self-catered apartments and our tour of Zadar, I will be showing this at the end of this video. But first let's start making my easy keto one skillet pork chop in mushroom gravy. The macronutrient value for this recipe is 7.3 to 1 with 8.8 total carbs, 1.1 gram of dietary fiber, resulting in 7.7 grams of net carbs per serving. Before I even assembled the few ingredients that I will need for this recipe, I took out the pork chops from the fridge and let them get to room temperature. The first thing I do is to pat dry the pork chops. Next I sprinkle the salt and pepper to both sides of each of the pork chops, and then I set the pork chops aside for a moment. By the way, you can use either boneless pork chops, as I'm doing in this demonstration, or even bone-in chops. It really doesn't matter to the recipe. Just use the pork chops you like best, or look out for a sale and use the ones that are the best priced. Now heat a frying pan on medium-high heat, and once it's hot, add your oil and butter, and as the butter is melting, stir to combine. Lay the pork chops into the frying pan and fry for 2 to 5 minutes, or until the pork chop is seared and has a golden crust on the bottom. Cooking time for your pork chops will depend on how thick your pork chops were when you began. Also, I would like to give you a pointer. If you're using a bone-in pork chop, use a raw chop that is about 20 to 30 grams or approximately 1 ounce heavier than the boneless chop. This will account for the weight of the bone, which we discard. Now flip the pork chop to the other side and fry this side for 2 to 5 minutes. Then remove the chops from the pan and set them aside. Using the same pan, reduce the heat to medium, add the onions, and saute until the onions are translucent. And then remove the onions and set them aside for a moment. Add the lemon juice and then stir it into the oil butter mixture and scrape over the bottom of the fond. This fond is the result of the fried pork chops, and if you incorporate it into your mixture, it will add a great deal of flavor to your gravy. So do try to get most of the fond from the bottom of the pan. Next I added the dry marsala wine. The wine is not necessary, but it's an optional ingredient. If you don't want to use wine, just omit it. But I think the dry marsala wine really gives the sauce an amazing flavor. And over the years, I have realized that a lot of Mediterranean recipes, especially the Croatian and Italian recipes that we enjoy, used a bit of wine. But again, this is optional. Also add the second batch of butter. If you're worried about the alcohol content, I'd like to explain that because you're cooking this for a while, most, if not all, of the alcohol will have evaporated, and as a result, the gravy will be infused with the rich flavor of wine. Stir and cook for about 2 minutes to allow the alcohol to start to evaporate. So it's up to you whether you want to use the wine in this recipe or not. Then add the cut mushrooms to the pot. Spread them out as evenly as you can and let them simmer for 2 to 3 minutes. Flip the mushrooms to allow the other side of the mushrooms to also fry to a golden brown. Repeat the flipping and tossing of the mushrooms 1 or more times until most of the mushrooms are an even golden brown on both sides. Remember, this is a Maillard reaction, and the aromatic compounds add a great deal of flavor to the gravy. That is why it's worth taking a couple minutes longer than just steaming the mushrooms. When the mushrooms are done, add the chicken stock and stir. Add the chopped cilantro or parsley. Either is good, but do reserve a bit of the cilantro or parsley for garnishing. Add the heavy cream and reduce the heat to low. Continue stirring and simmering the gravy for 5 minutes to develop the flavor. Now we place the pork chops and the grilled onions back into the pan. Use a spoon and ladle some of the gravy on top of the chops, and then cover the pot with a lid so that the chops don't dry out, and simmer for 5 more minutes. Then remove the lid and flip the chops so that the top side is now in the gravy, and simmer for about 2 more minutes. You want to heat the meat thoroughly and for the pork chops to absorb some of the sauce flavor. When your chops are done, remove them from a pot and set them aside for a moment. The final step is to thicken the gravy. As always, I prefer to use glucomannan. I dissolve the glucomannan in a bit of water, stir it to dissolve, and then add the liquid to the sauce. It's really important that you stir this in right away, and this will give your gravy a perfect consistency. To serve, place the pork chops onto a large platter, or you can just serve it directly onto individual plates. Ladle and distribute the mushrooms and the sauce evenly amongst all of your pork chops. Sprinkle the reserved cilantro or parsley on top. As you can see, I served the pork chops with my grilled zucchini spears, and the recipe for these will be in the description below. I also took cucumber strips, which I cut with my mandolin, and rolled them into a cone shape around a grape tomato. This added a bit more color, made for a great presentation, and added a bit more nutritional value to our meal. Enjoy! Thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you come back to see the next video. Please show your support for my channel by subscribing, and please turn on your notification bell. And I hope to see you next time when I'll present another new Croatian recipe, this really delicious 3-colored zucchini roll. And at the end of that video, I will share some more tips on how to stay keto on vacation as we traveled and explored Croatia's Dalmatian coastline. Now for a quick tour of Zadar, starting with our self-catering rental apartment. We realized that self-catering was the best way to go if we wanted to stay on keto. This apartment in Zadar was in a very well-maintained low-rise. This building was nestled in a very charming and quiet residential area. We had a good-sized open-concept living room, dining room, and kitchen. The sofa opened up and made a double bed. Besides the living room sofa bed, we also had 2 bedrooms, a master with a queen-size bed, and the other bedroom had 2 single beds. The apartment had everything we needed for a short or long stay. After settling in, we drove to the old town and found that there was a lot of parking available, and it was quite inexpensive. So now I'll take you for a walkabout and tell you about some of our favorite sites. Throughout history, Zadar has been known by several different names. It's a historic port city nestled in a peninsula. The earliest evidence of this site being inhabited dates all the way back to the Neolithic era, which was about 10,200 BCE. But the city itself traces its origin to the 9th century BCE and was founded as a settlement for the Illyrian people. And then in 59 BCE, it became a Roman municipality. I'm now going to skip ahead in history to 1202 AD. It's at this time when the Republic of Venice, with the help of the Fourth Crusade, conquered Zadar and burned the city. During their occupation, the Venetians built the Land Gate in 1543. The gate was created and embellished with Renaissance-style decorations, and the gate prominently shows the Venetian winged lion of St. Mark and the city's coat of arms, and the entrance was this triumphant arch. From here we walked down a beautiful, well-preserved street and came to the pre-Romanesque church of St. Donatus. The building of this church began in the latter part of the 8th century. I remember reading somewhere that this church was actually built on the site where the Roman Temple of Juno originally stood. In fact, one of the foundation stones had a Latin inscription that came from Juno's altar. The church was built on the corner of the original Roman Forum, which we had a wonderful view from the upper window. We learned that some of the building materials also came from the original Forum. We then walked around a bit and saw many unique historical features. It was really interesting. I will provide a link to the Croatian tourist board if you're interested in finding out more about Zadar or any of the other places which I will mention in future videos. Here we are at the People's Square. This was such a beautiful place that we bought some coffee, and the non-ketoers enjoyed apple ice cream. And while we enjoyed our coffee and ice cream, we sat down and listened to these talented men performing in the square. They harmonized and sounded really mellow. In the next clip, the audio is really poor, but these musicians were really good and really pleasant to listen to. After taking a break and enjoying the traditional Croatian music, we walked through the town and came to this garden, where they had placed busts of dignitaries on pedestals. We had a bit of fun and we each picked a favorite bust to have a photo taken with. David chose this fellow. We had a real chuckle because David did such a good pose, mimicking the look on this statue. There was a great deal of resemblance, don't you think? And Alex chose this gentleman, and when I asked him why, he said he liked his beard. We continued our walk, and on the way, we passed the sea organ. This is what is considered architectural sound art. It's an installation that plays music when the sea waves go through tubes located underneath a set of large marble steps. In the description below, I will post a link if you want to see and hear what the sea organ was all about. We also saw the Monument to the Sun, or as some people call it, the Greeting to the Sun. This 22-meter diameter circle is an installation made of 300 multi-layered glass panels with photovoltaic solar modules underneath it. This Monument to the Sun symbolizes communication with nature, in this case especially light, while the sea organ symbolizes communication with sound. If you are facing out towards the sea and look to your right, there are similar but smaller circle installations. Each of these represents a planet in our solar system. This was very well done. We came back at dusk because it was the best time to see the colors, and it was well worth it. On our way back to the car, we passed the church again, and this time it was lit up. It was so beautiful. I hope that my explanation of why we chose self-catering rentals and the tour of our apartment was helpful to you when you're planning your next vacation. The link for the printable pork chop and mushroom gravy recipe will be posted in the description below.